So today we're going to prepare the Star Shimmer border fabrics to go with our papers for the Crimson Poppy pattern. So the Star Shimmer border, it has lefts and rights, and it creates this beautiful spiked leaf piece. And on page 19 in your pattern, you have a chart for all your fabrics. And I've filled my chart in with my little swatches. And I've started the cutting. I've done all the cutting actually. So fabric 1A, you need 1 yard or just 32 inches. If you have a kit, you probably got a 1 yard piece. If you're cutting it yourself, you've probably got 32 inches of your assigned color. And when you're looking at the fabric 1A in the pattern on the right side of the page, it tells you to cut 4 8-inch by 42-inch strips. So I've already done that, and I've stacked them into 2 stacks of 2 strips with the right side up. And on it we put the unit F1R template layout sheet number 1 and number 2, and then we spin it to reposition it and cut it a second time. So I'm going to do that. So I have already placed all of my cut papers into the appropriate bags, and so my bag number F1 has the sheet number 1 for the F1R template layout sheet in it, so I'll put that aside. And my bag number 2 has the sheet number 2 for the F1L, so I'm going to pull that out, put these bags aside again. And I've got my 2 stacks of strips ready to go. And I think the easiest way to get it sitting on there without having to worry about it slipping around is just a little bit of repositionable glue on the back. So that's what I'm going to do. Just a couple strikes. And then that sits like this. And I'm not going to put it across the salvage edge, so I have it a little bit away from the edge. And I'll cut to fit that, and I'll spin it around and put it on the other end. Keeping it real here, folks. They're doing yard work outside, and you can hear those blowers taking care of all my leaves. Alright, so now I can just peel this off and spin it around so it'll fit on this other piece. And I want to keep it off the salvage, so I'm going to move it in a little bit. These are conveniently marked so that you have, when you cut your cut line 1, there's your number 12 section, there's your number 10 section. Cut line 3 gives me number 8. So it's keeping them in order for me. Because you want the smallest section number on the top. Those are our F1Rs. They go into our bag number 1. Now cut line 1 here gives me my section 2 and my section 4, 6, 8. I'm actually going to start with cut line 6 so I can stack these ones as well. That's section 12, section 10, 8, and I'm going to cut off the scrap, and that goes into bag number 2. The top of the next page, page number 20 in our Crimson Poppy pattern shows us the fabric F1B. It uses template layout sheet 3 and 4, and we're going to find those in bags number 3 and bag number 4. So I'm going to dig those template layout sheets out, and we'll do the same thing we just did with the last two. We're going to stack them on top of 2 layers, and we're going to flip it, clip it, and cut it. So I've got my fabric F1B. I've cut it into 4 11.5-inch strips, and I've layered them 2 strips and 2 strips. And my bag number 3 has my template layout sheet number 3 in it, and my bag number 4 has my template layout sheet number 4 in it. And we're just going to position them like we did the last ones along the edge, and then we're going to spin it and put it down a second time. So once again, I'm going to use some repositionable glue. I'll stick these, and then I'll paper clip them and cut them. So that's our F2R pieces, and they go in our bag number 3. And our F2L. And again, I'm going to do this in reverse order. I'm cutting line 6 first because the number 12 unit comes off the stack and it can go on the bottom of my pile. And those go in my bag number 4. They're the F2L. So the next fabrics in the chart, F2A, F2B, F3A, B, 4A, 4B, 5A, 5B, 6A, 6B, 7A, and 7B. All of these are 5.5-inch strips that need to be subcut into 2 2 3/4-inch strips. So each one of these is 2 strips. And so I've already done this ahead of time, and I've already stacked them in this order so that I can quickly go through my stack. So I have 2 strips that are 2 3/4 inches of the black for fabric F2A. And then when you go to page 20 and you look at the bottom of page 20, it tells you F2A needs template F1 right 11 and F1L 11. And you need to place it on your 2 3/4-inch strips. You have to stack them right sides up on top of each other, the 2 strips, and then you are going to cut 2 pieces of each template out of each strip. And it goes this way through the book. If you look at F2B, the next fabric, it tells you which templates to use, and again, you're going to stack them each twice. F3A, same thing. It tells you what templates, and you're going to stack them and twice and twice and twice, all the way through, all the way down until you get to fabric number 8, and then your instructions start to change. So you're going to see me cut through all these pretty quickly. I'm just going to take the template number that they tell me, put it on the correct color strips, and cut each of them twice. So for fabric 2A, F1R11 and F1L11 come out of bag F1 and bag F2. These are the two templates we need. And the first two pieces on my stack are fabric F2A. They're stacked right sides up, and we're going to put F1R11 on there, and then we're going to cut that, we're going to spin it and cut it again. So again, I'm just going to use a little tiny bit of repositionable glue. It helps it stick better. And that goes back into bag number 1. And then we need 2 of this next one, F1L. That goes back into bag F2. This is scrap. The next 2 on the strip are F2B. The next color is F2B. They're stacked right side up. And the next 2 templates are F2R11 and F2L11. And they come out of bag 3 and 4. And the right ones go into bag number 3, and the left ones go into bag number 4. I'm just sitting them on top of the bags as I go because we're going to be stacking a lot of these. So I have my bags lined up. There's my 3. There's my 4. So I've got my bags lined up, my F1, F2, F3, F4 bags, and I have my unit pieces so that my biggest unit section number is on the top of this blank pile. Same thing with each of these, because we're going to be working from the biggest section number down to the smallest section number, and I'm just going to keep them stacked on top of the bag because afterwards we're going to mingle them with the ones that we pre-cut that are already inside the bags. So our next color, I need the 2 pieces, and it would be F3A, and I can check on in my book, and it's F3A is my white. I have them stacked right sides up, and I need my template F1R9 and F1L9. We started with 11, now we'll go to 9, then we'll go to 7. You get the picture. So that's my F1R9, and this is my F1L9. So I'm just going to position that and cut it, spin it. Cut the salvages off. Okay, so that's my section 9 on my R's. And these are my L's, my F1, L9. And that's scrap. F3B is the next color, and we're going to use F2R and F2L. Just going to cut off the salvage. So all of these are pretty much going to be the same as you work your way down the list, and I don't think I need to show it all to you. So I'm going to cut through the rest of these rather quickly. And then I'll show you how to stack them all. F2R. F2L9 and F2L9. The next colors are F4A and F4B. And on the F4A, we're going to use template F1R7 and F1L7. And then on the B, 4B, we're going to use F2R7 and F2L7. And it's all the same drill. We're going to cut 2 of each of these on each of those strips, DAX. Onto fabric F5A and F5B. F5A is going to have template F1R section 5 and F1L section 5. 2 of each. And the F5B is going to have F2R section 5 and F2L section 5. 2 of each. The next 2 fabrics are F6A and F6B. F6A has template F1R section 3 and F1L section 3. And 6B has template F2R 6 section 3 and F2L section 3. And the last of the 2 3/4 inch strips are fabrics F7A and F7B. And so we have template F1R section 1, F1L section 1, F2R section 1, and F2L section 1. And again, we need 2 of each by spinning it and cutting it. And that's the end of all the spikes. So now we can stack them. So if you look at your bag 1 and you pull out those pieces that we cut earlier, these are the background pieces, and there are your unit pieces. Your background pieces are already stacked from small to big, and so aren't your spikes. So I'm just going to turn them over. We're going to look at section 11. I'm going to stack it with the sew side away from us. And section 10. And section 9. And 8. And 7. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and section 1. And those are ready to sew to these unit papers. So I'm going to just wrap them up in the unit papers so that they stay stacked. And put them back into the bag. So our bag F1 is completely ready for class, or for sewing if you're not in class. Oh, hey, look at that. There was another section. Section 12. I had a feeling it started with the background pieces. Section 1 on the top, section 12 on the bottom. And here's our next bag. So I'm going to just flip these over. And I'm going to take out all of these pieces. And I'm going to flip them over too. So our first piece is this big one for section 12. And section 11. 10. And the F1L units are ready to sew. And we're going to stack this one. I'm going to turn my stack over so that my highest number is on the top of the pile. And this stack as well, highest number is on top of the pile. And so we're going to look at this, and it's section 12, 11, 10, 9, And those are our F2R units. And our F3 bag. And then the last bag, we're going to do the same thing. Flip them over. And we're going to start with our biggest section, number 12, with the sew side away from us. 11, 10, and they all get wrapped up. Those are our F2L pieces, and they're in the F4 bag. We have the first 4 bags ready to sew. And now we're going to move on to the next bags, bag 5 and bag 6. And we're going to see where that is in the pattern. So the next fabric is fabric F8, and we're at the bottom of page 21 in our pattern. And we need to cut 4 14-inch strips, and we're going to separate them into 2 stacks of 2. So out of our bag 6, we need our templates F3L, F4L, F5L, and this is what they look like: F3L, F4L, and F5L. And they're going to go on this sheet. Pay attention to your grain line. And they're going to go on your stack with the grain line straight with the grain of the fabric. And there's your 3. And I'm going to put some repositional glue on these because these have to be cut out exactly on the dark outside line. They're T-templates. So we want them not to move. We have them on 2 pieces of fabric, so we don't want them slipping around. So I make sure I get the edges and the points, the curves, one in the center, and you let it dry for just a second or two, few seconds. And especially this curvy one. Get all those little points so that they don't move when you go to cut them. Okay, now they're all sticking to me. Okay, so the first one we place is our F5L. And the next one we place is our F4L. And then our F3L. And we have to cut them all twice, so we have to be very careful about how we lay them out so that we can cut them twice. So I'm going to show you an alternate way to cut it. We're going to need to use all 3 of these pieces on the other end of the fabric as well. And this set of strips was cut at 13 inches, not 14 inches. And it still can be done if you pay attention to the cross grain instead of the long grain. So I've got these lined up so that they're on the cross grain. It has to be moved just a little bit. And I can get one of each on this side. The template F3L still sits in the same spot in the center. And when we're going to cut them, I still will have enough room on the other side of the fabric for the other pieces. And when I'm doing the curves, I'm just going to free motion it here. And then it flips this way. And you can see there's plenty of room here. To go a second time. Now I'm only doing this because the pieces that I'm using were not 14 inches, they were only 13. I was able to cut 2 pieces at 14 inches and 2 pieces at 13 inches, so I wanted to make sure it would work with the fabric that I had. So those 2 pieces are done and ready to go. They have TRP lines on them, and those should be sewn before you actually use the templates. So I'll show you how to do those after I get all the rest of the pieces cut. So there's that first set, and then these will get cut, and they'll get cut again on the other side. So if I just flip this fabric around, I could actually go 4 deep. I should. We'll see how close I got. Oh, very good. It just fits. Just fits where I have that slice under there. Perfect. Can actually move it just a tiny bit over, up. Nice. All right, I'm going to go through all 4 layers here. So those are all done. And these are all lefts. So they go in the left bag, number 6. Now we're going to do the same thing with the right templates. And my right templates I'm going to put on 14-inch pieces, so I can lay it out exactly the way it is in the book. So when you're doing it, if your pieces are long enough to do it, just follow the way they have them laid out in the book, and cut 4 of each template. So here we are with the next 2 pieces, and we have template F5R1, F4R1, F3R. So 5 is the first one you place, and they're showing us they're going to get placed this way with the long grain line. And 4 is going to go this way. And I've already put my repositional glue on there, so it's easy. And then 3 goes this way. So I've got the first, I've got them stuck down, all 3 of them. And I'm going to try something here. I'm going to just cut out along this lower level, this lower line here, and then see if I can just turn my fabric around and make 4 layers. So let's see if this works. Now technically, if I take this piece and I spin it, I should be able to cut out all of these at the same time. And yes, yes I can. So I don't mind cutting through 4 layers, and that's what I'm going to do. If you don't like cutting through 4 layers, you're going to cut these first 3 out, and then you're going to lift them up off the fabric, and you're going to rearrange them on the other side. And cut them out again. But I find that repositionable glue really helps a lot. And this is a batik, it's so fine. I don't mind cutting through all 4 layers. And these have TRP lines, and I'll show you how to sew those once I get the rest of this cut out. I'll leave that out because we'll end up sewing the TRP lines on it. And that one too. And the next color is fabric F9, and we need to use 2 10 3/4 inch strips. So I have my F9 strips cut and ready to go, and they're lying with the right side up. And I need to take my template number 5 and lay it down. And this is going to be a bias on purpose because of the curve. And then I take my template number 6, and it goes this way, curls right inside of that. And then my number 5. Got that fold on there. I should have ironed that out. There we go, and then my 6. So there's one. These have TRP lines that we're going to sew before we cut them all out. And again, we do our template layout sheet number 5 and 6, 5. So at the bottom of our page number 21 in our pattern, it says the TRP, step 2 is to sew the TRP lines on each section, and then you cut them by slicing through the paper and fabric on the cut lines. And then you place all the right pieces in bag 5 and the left pieces in bag 6. So I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm going to show you how we sew TRP lines. So looking at your templates that are stuck to your fabric, you can see these little dotted lines and they say TRP. It's template registration point. That little darker dot is the template registration point. And the little dotted line is what we're going to sew on through the paper and the fabric. So I have my machine set on 2.5 for a stitch length, and I'm just going to stitch along that line. And I'm going to lift up my foot and I'm going to move over to the next one, and I can see one over here on the next template piece. So I'm going to stitch through that one. And then I'm going to stitch over to the next one. Lift my foot and slide it over to the next one. And now I'm going to go to the next template. So I'm just going to chop this so that I don't have to keep stretching it. And again, there's going to be 3. So I find every one of these dotted lines, and I'm just going to sew through them. Now if you used your repositionable glue, your paper, it shouldn't be moving off of the fabric at all. So you should be able to just slide them from one TRP to the next as you're sewing. If you have the scissor option on your machine, you can just cut. And if you don't have the scissor option, you're going to have to use your scissors to cut them. So those are done. Now for these ones. And that's it for the TRP lines. I'm going to do this to the second sheet of fabric I have, the second strip. And then these TRP lines on these separate units. Now we have one piece of paper and it's stacked on 4 pieces of fabric. Mine happen to be stacked on a light color fabric, and I know that when I punch holes through the fabric, I can still see the holes. Even when the paper is removed, I can see the holes on the fabric. So I'm going to remove my thread, and I'm going to hole punch instead of sewing with thread through all 4 layers. Now if you test this out and then you look at your fabric and you can't see those holes, I can see them just fine. So I know I'm going to be good. If you can't see those holes, what you're going to want to do is sew each one. And so what I do is cut just a little bit out on both sides of that TRP line. And I use it as a template to draw with a water-soluble marker on my fabric. I just do this and this. I cut both sides of that line. So I make myself a little template. And then I can fit my marker in there and I can draw myself a line. And I can do it on each one. So I remove the template and then I lay it down on the next piece of fabric and I draw my line, and you'll have to do that for all of them. But try doing the hole punch first, because a lot of times it works just fine all by itself. You just remove the thread from your machine and you stitch on that line and it punches holes for you. Now there were some TRP lines on other units that we were cutting out as we were preparing this pattern. So you can go back through your bags, find those other units that have TRP lines on them, and sew them as well, and then you'll be that much ahead of the game when you go to put your quilt together. So that's an easy way to do a whole stack. Of TRP lines. So I'm just going to sew right through all 4 layers. I'm not really sewing, I'm hole punching. You want to make sure that they're stacked perfectly before you do it. Now these are the lines that we're going to match up with the adjacent pieces as we're putting the whole quilt together. So they're very helpful. You don't want to skip this step. So all the TRP lines are sewn. Now we just got to cut them apart. And they're just templates. They're not T templates, so they don't have to be perfect. Just the sew side. Make sure you cut right on the sew side line. Cut line 3. I don't know why this is 2, but it is. And cut line 3 is the sew side. So that one you got to kind of make sure it's right on, because it's measured with a 1/4 inch seam for you. So all the lefts are going to go together and all the rights are going to go together. And they say on them, this says F4R and F5R2. So I'm going to make a pile of rights and a pile of lefts. This is an FR3. And then these ones are lefts. So I'm just going to cut outside. And I'm going to cut the 2 ends off. Cut line 1. And then the sew side, I want to make sure I cut that well too. I'm cutting these threads that went between them as I go. Well, I'm going to do the sew side on this one as well. Cut line 4. And then I'm going to do the cut line 2. It's easier than cutting it before you cut line 4. So these are L's. So the L's are all going into bag 6. And the R's are going into bag 5. So I'm just going to keep cutting these out and get them in the right bags. Okay, all the rights go in bag 5 and all the lefts go in bag 6. Those are all set to go. Last fabric. My last fabric is F10, and I have them cut into 9-inch strips, 4 9-inch strips, and I've stacked them up 2 by 2 with the right sides up. And for this, we're going to take our templates from bags 5 and 6 that we haven't cut yet, and that would be our template layout sheet number 8 and template layout sheet number 7. And we're going to get 2 of them off of each stack. So we're going to take our template layout sheet number 7 and we'll lay it down once like this. And just cut to the size of the sheet. And then we're going to spin it and lay it down again. and just cut it to the size of the sheet. You can see that the strip is a little oversized. That's okay. It just gives you wiggle room. And there's tea templates on this in this group. And the tea templates have TRP lines on them. So we're going to stack these. And we're going to glue the template layout sheet to the top of the stack. And then we're going to cut each piece out. So I'm trying to get them as close as I can, nearly perfect. And I'm going to use my repositionable glue. Let it dry a little bit. And that's that. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other template. And then we're going to cut out the pieces and we're going to sew the TRP lines. And now we're just going to cut them all out. This one that's kind of rounded, the big piece, we don't have to worry so much about being absolutely perfect on that one because it's just a template that gives you extra fabric so that you have wiggle room when you piece it. So that one we don't have to be too concerned about. It's these other two that we have to cut right exactly on the black line. These other two little ones. So we got to be a little more careful with those. Okay, just have to sew TRP lines, and that's the last of our F templates. So that's a wrap. We have 3 bags for J, 4 bags for K, 4 for L, 2 for M, and 6 for F. That's a lot of prep, but now the sewing will be easy and fun. All in one bag. Don't forget your pattern. Happy quilting!